Perfect. We're live on YouTube and Facebook. Just going to give Facebook a second here.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I'll get us going, and then as people start tuning in, I'll announce them as I see them. But good morning, everyone. I'm Juliette Abdel, President and CEO of the Westminster Chamber of Commerce, and I'm excited to bring back Ryan McCoy with me, and I'll briefly introduce him here in a second, but I'd like to give you the background that I always do at the start of this broadcast, which is if you've not already liked this page and hit the follow-up button, make sure you do so you can get those timely alerts. You can also share the content that you hear today if you know of others that might find this incredibly valuable, which I know you will. So make sure that you share it to your timeline. If someone doesn't have Facebook but you know would benefit from the content, we are also streaming this live on our YouTube page as well. And we allow for all the videos to be placed on our COVID resource hub that's at the Westminster Chamber website. The link is included for you in the comment section of this broadcast. Now, for those of you that may not be aware, we've started these videos way back in March. It was to help our businesses get acclimated to what was unfolding around them, how to adapt to it. And then we've morphed those into very structured types of programming. Hopefully you've been following and seeing that trend from our Thursdays that include nonprofit corners to our Mondays that have the mayor giving updates on city level, state and county issues affecting COVID and our community at large. Now, those are available to you at any point to replay in the video section. If you do, make sure you give us that hashtag replay so I know which you found the most beneficial and who I need to bring back specifically geared toward our audience. With that being said, I will start showing some of these comments, and I do so because one, we like flattery and compliments. So good morning to everybody that's starting to tune in with us. I see a couple of the Brians already. This is so you can familiar yourself with the feature. There's a comment and question section at the bottom of this video. If you're watching it on a mobile device, if you're watching it on your computer, you also have that at your fingertips. Type in any comments you want us to know about. If you pick up some information that you may not have known before, but quickly learned and found to be beneficial, we want to know what that is. And more importantly, at the end of the discussion, Ryan will take up some questions. So we make sure that you throw our way a few questions, whether they're fun ones or ones driven toward the content, so we can address those for you. Good morning to our board chair, Brian Dice, and of course our past chair, Brian Head. Thank you both for hopping on here as well. Now, today's broadcast I mentioned to you is part of our nonprofit corner, or a series that we've been hosting for close to 2 months now, where we identify nonprofits that we're partnered with and allow them to share a little bit about themselves, what they've been doing in the community, how COVID affected them, and maybe some of the newer efforts they've had to implement, and then how you can support them into the future. So today's topic is geared toward Front Range Community College's School Foundation. We have with us their executive director of that foundation, Ryan McCoy. You've seen Ryan with us with the Westminster Public Schools District update, where he also wears the hat of the school board as their chair. So he's very involved in the community, and I just think he is a gem to have whenever we can. So Ryan, it is yours to take away. I'll mute myself and I'll type out a lot of what you share with us.
Well, thank you, Juliette, and welcome everybody. I appreciate this opportunity. A lot of times when I'm on these forums, I'm usually talking about WPS, so it's nice to be able to talk a little bit about Front Range Community College and the foundation. A little bit of the background of the foundation: we started in 1994 by a number of community members actually who reside in both Jefferson and Adams County to really get that started. And the whole goal of the foundation really is to support the mission of Front Range Community College, which is to enrich the lives of others. And with that, our focus has always been on supporting students via scholarship. However, over the last few years, the foundation has evolved. And really since 2014, we have grown as an organization by adding staff, as well as increasing donations, because our brand has grown and people from all different pockets have started to recognize the importance of giving to community colleges as a whole. Some of our focus, as I mentioned, has changed. Over the past few years, we have launched 2 capital campaigns, which I always joke we've never done one, so let's do 2 at one time. And those focuses actually have been at the Center of Integrated Manufacturing, which is in Longmont, Boulder County footprint. And then we are about to cut the ribbon on a healthcare career center at the Larimer campus. And so both have been really exciting capital campaigns and initiatives that we have taken on to help support the college and the students. But I am happy to say that we have completed the campaign for the Center for Integrated Manufacturing and reached and surpassed our goal of $2 million over the last 2 years. However, we were in the middle of the capital campaign for the Healthcare Career Center at the Larimer campus when COVID happened, and it's still going on. And so that has been a unique challenge, I think, that has faced Front Range's foundation and the college as a whole. Because during that month of March, we had a number of meetings lined up with potential donors and community organizations who were interested in supporting the Healthcare Career Center. And we knew at that time, as well as the donors, that the focus needed to shift. And we, as an institution, we needed to shift as well. As we all saw in March during the shutdown, how many people lost their jobs. And when you're looking at employment, we have a number of students who work full and part-time during their academic career. And so with that, I mean, they're working to make ends meet. And so with them losing their jobs, we knew as an organization that we had to shift. And so Front Range, the foundation, has always had a high needs fund. And this high needs fund is always supported on emergency dollars for students. And so the emergency dollars can be everything from helping students with grocery bills to utility bills to pay rent. And so shifting from the capital campaign to that, although took a lot of work to do, our donors and community members in all 3 of our footprints really responded well. I think within a short period of about 6 weeks, our organization raised over $150,000 to contribute and to give back to the students who expressed need. And I will tell you, the need was huge. And we had students reaching out to us who, again, they were trying to determine, are they going to put food on their table for their families, or are they going to pay a medical bill that they had. And so these were some of the things that the foundation was able to position itself and help, but we wouldn't have been able to do that without the donors. Through this process, though, I will say it's been a huge learning experience. And I would say the foundation staff, as well as the college as a whole, we have really, tried to find the silver lining in all of this. And all of us have really sharpened our saws and have become more resilient and really look to best practices, looking to what other organizations are doing. But also, I thought one of the most important things for, as the executive director of the foundation, was to really take a look at history and what history can tell us of what's to come for nonprofit work. And, I can't think of how many different seminars or podcasts, or Zoom calls that I've participated in or listened to, and trying to understand, during economic downturns, how nonprofits are really supposed to position themselves. And what we've seen during, the economic downturns in, the early 2000s, as well as with 9/11, and then during the Great Recession, one thing that was true, you saw, not that giving declined in certain overall, but giving did decline in many cases in higher ed outlets. And so you saw giving increase where there were nonprofits who provided direct human services. So for example, during those times, you saw an increase in giving to homeless shelters, to food banks, to nonprofits that really focused on moving people out of poverty, and and respectfully so. But you would see a dip in higher ed. What I think the community colleges are positioned uniquely in is we're not a traditional four-year university who is out, a four-year university advancement team. We by all means tackle all of those direct human services. At Front Range Community College, all three of our campuses have food banks, and we raise and seek funds for those food banks. We are by all means a driver of ensuring that students can move out of poverty, and I think that's one of the great things that the community college provides as a whole, because we create that opportunity for students to pursue a certificate, a fast track program, and to get out into the workforce to make a livable wage. And so I think those are some of the unique things that that Front Range does, and how the foundation really tries to support those initiatives. The one thing that I do think is interesting, and I continue to read on, and this is true for any nonprofit world. I think if any of you have read the article in the Chronicles of Philanthropy, we saw that there's a 6% decline in giving across the board during the first quarter. And that also just goes back to the economic downturn. But that 6%, if we're going to continue to see an economic downturn, just within that within the year, nonprofits would be looking at a $25 billion shortfall. And that's across the US. And so I think that's something that we as nonprofits, by all means, scared us when we first read that article. But again, it allows us, to reposition ourselves, and how do we do a better job at telling our story. I think all nonprofits right now need to communicate and continue to over-communicate with their potential donors and donors. I do think that we play a vital role in the economy, as well as we do great work at closing that inequity gap in our communities. That's the role of nonprofits. And I have been blessed, I think. Within the community college structure, we have 13 community colleges that report to our mothership, which is CCCS, which is the hub that kind of Chancellor Joe Garcia oversees all of that. And each community college has its own foundation. And so we do get together as a team to talk best practices, to vent, and just to sit there and just know that, hey, we're all in this together. But at the end of the day, I think when we're looking at this, we know that we, like our students, need to be resilient. And knowing that these are difficult times, there's a reason that these nonprofits were created, and that was to provide a hand up for those in need. Juliet, do you have any questions or anything along those lines?
Yeah, no, I thought that was so great. Thank you, Ryan. And for everybody that's coming on, I've seen a lot of people hop on, hop off, hop back on, etc. We have with us Ryan McCoy, who is the Executive Director for the FRCC Foundation. I've tried to capture a lot of what he shared with us in the comment section. You're more than welcome to provide us with comments or questions along the way. We've had a couple of people that have kind of just popped in to share some good morning messages with us. I see Wayne Anderson. Thank you for tuning in. And then I also see Karen. I see Tara. Tara is just sharing that you guys at FRCC go far and above and beyond for your students. It's amazing to see the support systems. I was actually looking for initial comment because it captured her experience, and that she is an FRCC student, a parent of 3 at WPS as well. So both of your hats do a factor. just wants to say thank you for everything that your foundation has done. The scholarship that has been received by her have been incredibly helpful, especially when her husband lost his job. The emergency fund kept their apartment and their children fed. So I think that is an amazing testament that we can hopefully pull off and share with you, and you can, be able to display that. But more importantly, I'm just kudos to you. I know you shared earlier that you completed your $2 million initial capital improvement plan. You had two going on at once, and then the secondary one that was stalled. And that is something that people don't necessarily see is, outside of what you're doing on a continual basis of servicing, funding those emergency funds or supporting the food banks that you have on your campuses, is that you're also strategically thinking long term how you envision the foundation and where you want it to go. And so when things like this happen, it not only stops our big picture pie in the sky that we love doing what we do for, but it makes us kind of refocus on the resources that we have and how we can best fill those. So I'm not surprised by that 6% figure that's there. I'm thinking that's a little bit low, especially now. I'd be curious to see the updated figures, because a lot of our nonprofits are affected by everyone that supports us, whether it's donors or people that are attending those events or supplying us with their resources, time, and volunteers. So I don't see any questions, so we're just going to keep moving through. You mentioned earlier, Ryan, that you have added staff to your team, and as a result of adding the staff and your continued growth from 1994 to date, you've taken on those various activities within your foundation to add to the core functions of what you were doing. That being said, what do you still have staff with everything going on, and what does that break down into?
Well, so when I say we've added staff, so when I started in the role in the foundation in about 2010, we had one full-time executive director, and at that time it was a part-time assistant. And since then we have grown, and we have grown to 4 full-time staff members, which, believe me, that's huge for our organization. And but we are uniquely positioned in the sense that Front Range Community College covers the salaries and benefits of the staff. So our foundation, we're not raising money for overhead as it relates to salaries and benefits, which by all means, for anyone who gives, it's really important to give to that annual fund that's unrestricted for nonprofits, because it does provide the cost that expenditure of overhead. But we positioned ourselves that way, and through the leadership of President Dorsey, because he wants to ensure, as well as the foundation board of directors, that every gift goes directly to its cause. And so we don't take an administrative fee off the top. So we've been fortunate that way. And so as the college has grown and we have grown as a foundation, we have been able to put more resources behind that. What makes it challenging, though, Julia, I will say, is our footprint. Front Range Community College is the largest community college in Colorado, serving over 28,000 students annually. And when you have a small staff of 4, getting to each of those campuses, from Westminster to Fort Collins, which doesn't seem far, but if you're on I-25, especially heading southbound from Fort Collins back to Westminster, it's a long drive.
Absolutely. And oh my gosh, the travel time alone can really put a full-time employee almost into part-time when they get off the road, right? But I can sympathize with this, and I know that's why you're sharing it. We often, as nonprofits, just have so much that we can do that we end up spreading out, and we don't necessarily have the backing. But that's amazing that I had no idea that FRCC does fund your salary, so that does help, especially during a time as uncertain as this, that you wouldn't have to worry about the overhead and everything. That being said, are you all housed in FRCC? Is everyone remote right now, or how does the foundation work with everything going on?
So my staff, the foundation staff, primarily are working remotely. I am at the Westminster campus right now. That's where my main hub is, although I do have an office in Fort Collins. And I have been getting out to some extent. It's based on the preference of our donors. We have some donors who would prefer a phone call. I know a lot are getting tired of Zoom, which is why I entertained, should we do smoke signals moving forward, just to change things up. But I do have a few donors who do want to meet in person. And when we do, by all means, we're practicing social distancing, we're wearing masks. But there is that level of human connection that is important. And I know a lot of people think, well, because of the technology, we'll always be virtual moving forward. I don't believe that. As humans, we have a need to connect. And I just think when this crisis, this pandemic is over, you're going to see people coming back tenfold.
Absolutely. Well, that's one of the things that we always say, chamber will never go out, because we need, even in the age of digitalization, people need that personal experience. And even if you've met the person, I feel like I haven't seen you in 20 years, and it's probably only been since last summer, and it's that prolonged period of time does a lot to somebody's mental health. And we're naturally social people. So I agree with you on that. Brian does share, since he's known you, you've been He's been impressed by the important role that the foundation plays in allowing students to get the education they desire. I think that just, again, I always love these comments because it reaffirms what you guys are doing and the work that you do and how people are observing it from the outside looking in. That being said, what does the future look like for the foundation? Now, I know that you've obviously had to, hold off on certain things. You're adapting to those donors that you might be meeting with, or people that are hoping to get more engaged. How do you foresee your programming switching back or going back to a little bit more of your campaigning? Are you adding newer efforts in? And then once you're done answering that, I have a follow-up on ways people can get engaged.
Yeah, so we will always be a scholarship organization. That's how, that's the foundation, if you will, the foundation of who we are is to support students via scholarship. It was recently that we really started to explore supporting some of our career technical education programs. And so when a lot of people, when they hear CTE, it ties in with the vocational trades. It's just every decade, I think they change the name of what that is to help market and advertise to students. But it's really important that we have a place and a role in that as a foundation, because our philanthropists do want to support a lot of the programs. So when you're looking at our healthcare pathways or advanced manufacturing, these are extremely expensive programs to operate. And a lot of times, in most cases, student tuition for students who are enrolled in those programs doesn't cover the cost and the expenses related to that program. So we have to subsidize them through other programming and other tuition. So for example, Julia, if you were you're taking English, psychology, some math work, those classes are not as expensive to operate as automation and engineering technology. And so what we're trying to do as a foundation is to work with like-minded individuals, philanthropists, who can go and start supporting those programs and supporting it in ways of helping us to purchase new equipment, because as you can imagine, equipment is always being updated and needed change, to people who are now starting to give to an operational endowment specifically for the Center for Integrated Manufacturing. We were very fortunate towards the end of the year where one of our foundation board members launched an endowment specifically to help with the expenses related to the Center for Integrated Manufacturing. And so now people are starting to give to that, so that the interest that's earned on that will help cover some of the basic supplies that are needed for students to be successful in that programming. So to me, that's where I see our shift as a foundation, is to really looking at how we can help support those CTE programs long term, because in doing that, it allows Front Range to actually reallocate some of its resources to other programs to help them grow as well. We have seen a huge shift, though, in our donors really focusing in healthcare in general, and that was pre-COVID. As you may know, when you look at the workforce, there's a great need for nurses. And so we're starting to see a lot of our donors come to the table providing scholarship support for students seeking any degree in healthcare. But we're also seeing donors step up and trying to help cover some of the expenses related to equipment within the nursing program or our surgical tech, et cetera.
And I've personally toured those, so I've seen some of the space that you guys have, and it's upgraded. And as technology continues to get updated in the medical field, the students need to be learning on things that are in real time.
Right.
I think that's incredibly important to have that practical application. But you know me, I'm a strong supporter of the CTE. I myself had gone through a vocational, at the time it was vocational school. Yeah. And so that was kind of my interest area. And I know it's a huge benefit to those that do pursue it. And whether they go on into another university and pursue a further education, they still have that degree that they can work with. Or if they just stop there and they kind of go into the field of trade, they gain that experience, and that lifelong degree translates into benefit for them in the long run. That being said, how do most of your students find out about you? So is it you have to be immediately enrolled and then they're routed to you all? Can they reach out to you before they apply to the university, or excuse me, to the college? Or how would they know what the first step would be?
So, I mean, by all means, even students who aren't enrolled at Front Range Community College, on our website, there is a tab that is called Paying for College. And going there shows you everything from your FAFSA to other scholarship opportunities, both external and internal to the college, where students can begin to apply. I will say, by and large, we would like to see more students applying for scholarships. As an entity that serves 28,000 students, we should be having well over 5,000 students reaching out and applying every year, and we don't get close to that number. We communicate to the student body multiple ways for them to access, but I will say, year in, year out, and really since 2010 when I started in the foundation, we always have more females applying for scholarships than males. And when we ask the male students, why aren't they applying? They just like, well, it's not for me. I won't get anything, and they're just discouraged. And I think that's true for all students. But we have scholarships that range from merit-based. You're the top performer in this program, and you're going to get awarded based on that, to students who are like, hey, this is, we know that this is your first step into higher education, and you might be a first-gen student, and your GPA might be below a 2.5. That's fine. We have scholarships for those students as well. Our goal, though, when we do start to award students, just so that you know, is we want to make sure that they're successful, because our donors want to make sure that this was a smart investment. Because if their students are successful, they're going to continue to give, and we know that our students are going to reside back in the community, so it's a true investment back into the community as a whole. But we require our scholar recipients to stay in contact with us and to make sure that they're meeting with their academic pathway advisors. That's extremely important for their success. And we are happy to report that of our reports of last year of our scholars who received funding from us, that they had an 89% course completion rate. And so it shows that they're not withdrawing from classes, that they're sticking with it. And so again, we can always do more to communicate and to reach out to students to apply more, but it's really them just investing the time and taking that step. And it's really not a daunting process at all. At the most, it would take 3 hours for a student to complete the application. And if it's $1,000 scholarship, by all means, they just made $333 an hour just by completing that application. So sounds pretty like common sense to me to take advantage.
I feel like you've done this math before, either that or
we have.
I see Adam on here with me. Good morning to you, Adam and Becky. Thank you for hopping on. And I asked that question partly because I knew that, the usage on things, especially whenever they're easily available, people just don't know what they don't know. And so if they've never heard about it or have not been told about it, they won't go out of the way to find it. And this is a clear example of that when you're saying, you would anticipate up to 5,000 students that would apply in a calendar year, but it's not necessarily what we're seeing through the doors. It's interesting that you had that breakdown from the female to male ratio as far as the applicants that were there. I think for another conversation, we could touch on, the number of enrollment of females versus males to see, if that has anything to do with it. But it also could be a clear indication that sometimes when we create programs that are very specific to select members of our community. It also tends to exclude others, or there might be a feeling of exclusion that's there. And I would imagine that might be felt in this situation. Not anything that's done on your part. I'm just saying in generality.
No, for sure.
That's always something that comes out of it. We mentioned the website where they can find, if they're not a student, they can go on this website. They can get more information about FRCC, about the foundation, etc. But we don't know where that domain is. So can you share with me what your website is?
So it's frontrange.edu. And that's the main page, and you'll see the tab that in the top part that shows for students to access for applying. And then on that same page, for those individuals interested in giving to Front Range Community College, if you scroll down just a little bit, there is a red button that says Give Now. And so from there, that takes you to a number of different initiatives that we have and areas where people can give. I would say we are seeing an increase in giving right now, and it's needed, and the money is being spent immediately. So it's coming in our door and directly out to the students, but it is our high needs fund. And those are the emergency scholarships that are really allowing students to continue and to focus on their education, and knowing that they're getting some supplemental income to help cover the cost of utility bills and or groceries or whatever their greatest need is at that time.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I've typed that in here. I've put in both the domain and where they can find the red button. That's all you need to look for. Red button, click there, and then enter in your credit card information. I don't know if you have Apple synced on there or not, where they could start doing Apple Pay, but it could be a quick feature that we can add in. I am at our 30-minute mark, believe it or not, Ryan, which means that we are about to round out. As I'm closing out, I always like to kind of throw up any last-minute comments, but I appreciate everybody that's tuned in with us already. If you just hopped on toward the end of the broadcast, know that this will be available to you to rewind and rewatch. If you are coming on later on and we are no longer live, give us that hashtag replay and let us know that you absorbed some of the information. Brian had sharing his appreciation and feels that we are very fortunate here in Westminster to have our FRCC, of course, the foundation, and you, Ryan, for all that you're doing. We also have a quick tease from Brian Dice. So while you're reading that, I will continue. We will be back here tomorrow at 11 a.m. for our next broadcast that's live. Make sure that you share this video with anyone that's in your network that's either looking to explore about the foundation, about the community college, or just understand more of what they're experiencing, what their role is in the community, because it's incredibly important. And of course, I see Councillor DeMott. Thank you so much for hopping on. Better late than never, geez. But I will close that out by sharing. Thank you, Ryan. I know I shared with everybody that you're on the Westminster Public Schools board. You're also the executive director for the Front Range Community College. You're plugged into the Noon Rotary here in Westminster, and you have helped out in a number of nonprofits in the area in addition to civic groups. So you taking a 30-minute chunk out of your day meant a lot to our group, and hopefully I will see you guys soon. Thank you.
Well, thank you.